Jake has two brothers in Adventure Time. The first, and the one most people know, is Finn, but his other brother is Jermaine. And let's just say that Jermaine's life was pretty miserable for the longest time, but not forever, and we'll get to that. But in order to understand Jermaine's life, let's start from the very beginning. So Jermaine was born your classic normal way from his mother, but his brother Jake, not so much. You see, their dad Joshua got bitten by a shape-shifting alien during one of his adventures, and instead of just getting sick or dying like a normal person, he grew a weird blue lump on his head that eventually gave birth to Jake. You heard that right. Jake essentially burst out of Joshua's skull like some kind of magical forehead puppy. And all of this happened right as their mom, Margaret, was about to give birth to Germaine the normal way. So from the very first day, day one, Germaine was sharing a crib with his half-alien half-brother, and his parents decided to just never tell Jake about any of this. Great start, right? Now, here's where things get really rough for Germaine. While Finn and Jake went off to have adventures, be heroes, live in a cool treehouse, and basically do whatever they wanted, Germaine got stuck with a very different job. After their parents died, someone had to guard all of Joshua's old adventure loot, magical items, demon possessions, all kinds of dangerous stuff, and that someone was Germaine. So now picture this. Germaine is living alone in their parents' old house, surrounded by a circle of salt, which is the only thing keeping angry demons from breaking in and taking their stuff back. He can't leave. He can't have a normal life. He's just trapped there, flipping cassette tapes to keep force fields running, guarding a basement prisoner named Bryce, who constantly threatens to eat him from the bottom up, and watching his brothers live their best lives. But the worst part out of all of this is that Germaine felt like he had to do this, like it was his responsibility because he was the quote-unquote responsible one. Meanwhile, in his mind, Finn and Jake were their dad's favorites who got to go off and be heroes. At this point in time, years have passed. The demons outside still mock him, calling him Germaine the Pain. He's isolated, exhausted, and resentful, and when Finn and Jake finally visit, Germaine snaps. He attacks Jake, screaming about how unfair it all is, how they get to live easy while he's stuck in this prison. But then something interesting happens. Jake, mid-pummeling, calmly tells Germaine the truth, that Joshua loved them all equally, and more importantly, Germaine could have left any time he wanted. Nobody forced him to stay. He built his own cage. Now this of course hits Germaine like a truck, and when the house catches fire during their fight, instead of panicking trying to save it, Germaine just lets it burn. All of it. The house, the treasures, the responsibility, gone. And with it, the demons have no reason to stick around anymore. The very next morning, Germaine walks off with Bryce, the very same demon who'd been threatening him for years, but had somehow become his only real companion. They bicker like an old married couple as they head into the woods. Germaine is finally free, but Germaine's story doesn't end here. So as we know, his life was miserable for the longest time, but this is the point in time where things change. Germaine starts to find himself, and all of a sudden, the tables are flipped. Now Jake's life is miserable, with him not being comfortable in his new form, and Germaine is there to help. See, after the Elements miniseries, Jake went through some changes. Remember how he was born from that shape-shifting alien? Well, that DNA finally kicked in. Jake transformed into this blue alien-looking creature with bat wings and spikes, and he was not handling it well. I mean, I probably wouldn't either. He couldn't even look at himself. Finn was even somewhat uncomfortable around him, and even Bimo was a little scared. Jake was in denial, insisting that he was still the same, but his body kept morphing every time he got defensive. He tried to convince himself nothing had changed, but deep down, he knew the truth. And here's where Germaine comes in. You see, Jake started having these shared dreams with Germaine again, except this time, Germaine wasn't the one who needed saving. In one dream, Jake found Germaine painting in a gallery, but instead of landscapes, he was painting abstract art. Jake could not believe it. His brother, who used to paint mountains and nature, was now doing abstract work. Jake convinced himself that something must be wrong, that maybe Bryce had manipulated Germaine or something. So he tracked Germaine down to his new place, a cool little studio behind a literal wall of water in the wasteland, guarded by James. But when Jake burst in trying to rescue Germaine, he found someone completely at peace. Germaine explained that he got tired of painting these same shapes over and over again. He wanted to paint things that represented how everything is constantly changing. And this time, that's when it hit Jake. Everything changes. Jake had been so focused on denying his transformation that he couldn't see what Germaine had already figured out. Change is inevitable, but it doesn't mean you stop being yourself. Germaine also dropped another bombshell, and that's that their dad Joshua knew this would happen to Jake one day. He'd warned Germaine about it, but never said what kind of changes. Joshua knew Jake's alien DNA would eventually surface, and it did. And with Germaine's help, Jake finally accepted his new form and was able to shift back to his normal dog appearance, not because he rejected the change, but because he accepted it. He understood that he was quote-unquote different, yet the same. Later, when Jake got stranded on a planetoid with nothing but clown cake and cocktail hot dogs, guess who showed up to help? Germaine, again. He'd had another shared a dream with Jake and immediately went to Finn to organize a rescue mission to Mars. They went through an entire temple to save Jake, and here's the kicker. We know that the temple creates obstacles based on your their unresolved issues. Finn had to face his conflict with Fern, Betty had to confront her obsession with saving Simon, but Germaine, the temple, had nothing for him. No obstacles, no trials, because Germaine had already dealt with all this baggage. He was the only one who'd actually worked through his issues. So now Germaine kept showing up when it mattered the most, and in the finale, when Finn needed to save Fern from the grass demon, Jake pulled Germaine into yet another shared dream. Together, they dove into Finn's subconscious to retrieve his vault, the place where Finn kept all of his repressed memories locked away. Jake even hallucinated Lady Rainicorn and their kids while searching for it, but he and Germaine pushed through and found what they needed. Thanks to their help, Fern was finally able to confront and kill the grass demon that had been controlling him. And after that, Germaine went back to doing what he loved. The last time we see him in the series, he's painting a massive mural at Castle Lemongrab. Lemongrab 3 is watching him work, genuinely appreciating the art, and it's such a perfect moment for Germaine. He's not trapped anymore, he's not resentful, he's just creating, living his life on his own terms. But here's where things get even more interesting. In the episode Together Again from the Distant Lands miniseries, which takes place in the afterlife after both Finn and Jake have died, Germaine appears alongside Joshua and Margaret in the Dead Worlds. And here's the thing, we never actually find out if Germaine died and ended up there naturally, or if he somehow just traveled to the Dead World to hang out with his family. It's most likely the first, but the show kind of deliberately leaves this ambiguous, which is probably for the best. What we do know is that Germaine is there, painting portraits again. He seemed to have moved on from abstract art, or at least added portrait paintings back into his repertoire. When Finn is desperately searching through the various Dead Worlds to find Jake, he runs into Joshua, Margaret, and Germaine first. They're the ones who give him crucial advice. You can only get to the 50th Dead World where Jake is by not wanting to get there. And after all the chaos with New Death and the Lich, Tiffany actually ends up saving Joshua, Margaret, and Germaine from an explosion that destroyed their Dead World, and in a bizarre twist, Joshua and Margaret decide to adopt Tiffany, Jake's former enemy, as their own son, which means now Germaine technically has another brother. And speaking of brothers, in the newest Fiona and Cake episode, we learned that the Cosmic Owl actually has a brother. Sounds crazy, right? Well, click here to watch my video where I break down the entire episode, and don't forget to subscribe. But as always, stay adventurous.